stacking surfer. The life topic, I'm your best friend. Balances in your bank and stack.
Everybody to the chat today. I'm Jared, the stacking surfer, and I'm here with Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin. And we got a lot to cover today, guys. It seems like every week, Andy, there is so much that's happening that we really do try to get a show out every week because there's just so much going on. And as of just late, for some of those that probably don't even know yet, we've had a big, basically a big campaign from the United States to dismantle or destroy the Iranian nuclear capacity to create any kind of weapons or any kind of energy of any kind using nuclear energy. And then it looked like a ceasefire for a few hours. And then all of a sudden
Right,
there was another attack. And so there's just chaos going on in the markets. And so we've seen gold and
right.
silver go up. We've seen it go down. We've seen cryptos go up. And a lot of people are trying to figure out, where are the precious metals going right now, price wise? What's going on in the world? How do we best prepare for these things? But I'd love to get your take on what's going on with some of those world events. And, what are you looking for? What are you watching for, Andy? And, do you have any words of wisdom for us in times like this?
Well, as far as gold is concerned, and as far as silver is concerned, I think that there's a high probability that what we've seen, really, as far as I'm concerned, since June 12th, with gold down about $100 and silver down about $1, is not a reaction. It's a strategy. It's a
Okay.
strategy that is implemented in the form of a methodical decline. And that decline started Sunday night. It hasn't stopped. This is being done by the bullion banks who want you to believe the narrative that it has to do with, the ceasefire and moving from, risk off back to risk on. This is price suppression, period. And I say that to you for the biggest reason is that tomorrow is option expiration on COMEX. And Friday pushes the front end month, July, silver contracts into delivery. So there's a lot at stake the end of month, the expiration, and the July silver contracts which go off the board. You have the second largest short position by the banks in silver in the history of the COMEX market. So, in fact, I said this on a couple of podcasts that I expected there to be a pullback into the weekend as a result of this. My guess is Monday you would see things move the other direction, perhaps Tuesday, simply because you have this big deal happening on Monday. So with the end of the month contracts moving off the board and the first day of notice for the July contract. But look, as far as what's happening, people I think are too reactionary. They think too much in the moment. The bigger picture was looking very positive for gold and silver long before this 12-day war that we've now seen in Israel and Iran. So, I think it's has less to do with geopolitical events and more to do with commercial bank positioning right now on COMEX, and they have to push it down right now because of this massive short position. If not, you're talking existential threat to the survival of some of these banks who have this massive, massive, massive short position. So I expect it to be short-lived and then resume its upward trajectory the way it had been going for the past several weeks now.
Andy, that makes a lot of sense to me too. I with most people that are stacking gold and silver, they are looking for the long run. They often look for entry positions, and sometimes they may have some short-term needs where they've got to sell a little bit of gold and silver to pay for bills, emergencies, things like that creep up. Those of us that may be investing in some of the mining stocks or other, stocks or even crypto, That's where it seems to be more of an issue with the short term that goes on, and people, looking at the prices, trying to figure out where to go next with it. So based on what you're saying, Andy, going into next month, do you see them shorting as much as they have in the past, the bullion banks? Do you think they'll start pulling back on some of those short positions?
I think they're
Do you have
doing it
any?
in gold already. They're
Okay,
beginning to mitigate in gold. It's like they're losing control. But they want you to believe that this is a safe haven unwind. That the only reason that they've gotten this high is because of the
got it.
tensions in the Middle East. And they forget that it had been going that high long before this. But yeah, I think in general, what you're witnessing is maybe the realization by some of these banks that being short and having to use this much ammunition to hold down the prices is silly. Since Trump was elected, Jared, there's been over almost 820 tons with a T of gold have stood for delivery, and almost 9,000 tons of silver.
Yeah, that's a
This
lot.
surge of deliveries into COMEX warehouses is crazy, and this is long before we've seen any problems with what's happening here in the Middle East. So at some point, when we see such physical demand, not just on COMEX, but in the LBMA and all around the world, I think continuing to be naked short is very silly. So I would like to think that we're getting closer to that, because it seems like we've already crossed that line with gold, where they're really not trying to knock it down quite the same way that they did. Now people look at gold, what's it down today? Let me take a look. You look at gold today and it's down 45 bucks. It sounds like a
Yeah.
lot, but it's a 1.5%. That's nothing. It's just that as the prices go higher, percentages seem bigger for sure. But yeah, I think that ultimately all manipulations end poorly, and I think this one will be no different as far as I'm concerned. So stay the course. The physical demand is overwhelming. The ability of these banks to easily suppress the price to the point where they have to have the second largest concentrated short position by the commercial banks in the history of the exchange for the July delivery. That tells you that we're getting, I think, to an environment where being naked short like this is really probably not worth the setup probably isn't worth the return when you talk about potential fallout.
I agree, and I don't think people have been jumping into it, especially retail hasn't been jumping into gold and silver because of what's been going on the last 12 days. Not even what's been going on over in the Ukraine and with Russia. People were jumping into it because they saw it as a safe haven asset against inflation. They saw it as a safer way to store their wealth in times of uncertainty, more financially based than necessarily geopolitically. So,
Totally.
Andy, as we get into this too, I love this new setup. Tell us a little bit about what you've got set up behind you here. Are you in
We
your new
have a
studio today?
we are in the new studio. I have a big announcement that is probably going to be made tomorrow, Wednesday.
Okay.
It's been a long, long process to get this set up, but yes, you're pretty much the first episode I've done in this new studio, and some very exciting things to announce tomorrow. But yeah, no more dogs barking in the background or doorbells ringing their UPS deliveries. We're very excited to be here, and this is just the very beginning. We got a lot of cool things to announce in the next day or two.
That's awesome, Andy. So we're excited to be able to be the first to have you on with your new setup. And I'm from coming
Likewise.
live from Maui today, guys. So it's exciting to be out here as well. So Andy, as we go past the geopolitical that's happening in the short term here, we've
Yeah.
talked about potentials of Operation Sandman. We've talked about BRICS nations. Over the last several years, we've talked about a little by little by little by little, and then all of a sudden. Do you have any indicators that we're getting closer to that all of a sudden type of a moment?
Yes, I mean, you're just seeing things accelerate in every single way. The way that the central banks have been accumulating, the way that they've been standing for delivery, it just feels like things are getting far more tense and tight everywhere, even in terms of this country, that something needs to break. This divisiveness that we see, where there's no common narrative any longer. Like we look at federal employees that are wasting and stealing taxpayer dollars as somehow a threat to democracy on one end, where President Obama deported over 5 million illegal immigrants and the left stayed silent, yet here you got Trump doing 20,000 convicted criminals and he's labeled a fascist. The double standards are staggering, and I think that these are it's kind of like the end game where we're that far apart. So from a standpoint of unity in this country, of divisiveness, of something ripe for a change. People were talking not too long ago about a civil war. When you see all this stuff happening, the protests in these cities, and yes, I do feel like it's getting to that point where we're getting closer and closer and closer to some form of a reset, some form of, you see it politically, you see it socially, you see it morally, you see it economically. You're seeing it in the way that the world is breaking away from the dollar. You see it in the way that the world is accumulating commodities instead of, which is really the linchpin of the system, in favor of treasuries. You're seeing so many things that are accelerating. When we talk about the BRICS in particular, it was Sergei Lavrov who came out and said that their new payment system, cross-border payment system, the bridge technology, would be offered to non-BRICS members. That's a massive deal. You have the BRICS meeting here in July. This is a very big deal. It's just a couple weeks away. So yes, we are getting closer to that all-in moment. I don't know what the trigger is, but you can feel the tension in the air. So yeah, and I think it'll catch us all off guard. Normally, when you look back at these things, none of us see the pivot. We never would have dreamed that what happened in 2020 would have been something even on our radar screen. But you look around and you have highest levels of indebtedness, lowest level of savings. You have, just a setup that's ripe for change. And I don't know what it will be, but yes, I do feel we're getting much closer to that. And I think all of this stuff is not lost on the rest of the world, whether it be our political thing with Trump and being on the wrong side, whether it be the mismanagement of the world reserve currency, the fiscal and monetary irresponsibility, the divisiveness and divide in this country between left and right and blue and red and black and white and rich and poor and vaccine and no vaccine. And all of these things have just reached a boiling point. So it seems we're getting closer to that moment, certainly, maybe than ever before. And then you look at how the debt just keeps on accumulating. And at some point, the rest of the world is going to say, we just don't want to continue to hold dollars, to accumulate dollars for our goods and services. And worse yet, we certainly don't want to hold treasuries for the reserves in a country that's lost all fiscal responsibility, in fact, lost all fiscal sanity. And here we are with Doge, $90 billion or whatever that they saved. That's 38 hours worth of spending by the U.S. government. It's next to nothing. And they want to raise the debt ceiling again. And $2.5 trillion in deficit spending again. We're not getting any better. The rubber is going to meet the road at some point. So I would look less for that all at once moment and deal with the fact that we're probably getting closer to that moment than ever before. Live in a world of probability where it can't stay this way. There's no reason that anyone would want to hold our treasuries in a currency that is being devalued as fast as this one is. And what is the negative outcome for the treasury market? Don't interest rates really have to go higher in order to entice people or to pay them fair value for a currency that is being inflated away? And that's one of the reasons why there's such an impetus to lie about the metrics in which we gauge inflation, the CPI, through the BS, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they lie, and whether it be through unemployment or through inflation, I think we all feel that inflation is much higher than they're telling us. But these are all the things that add to that moment. But yeah, I do think that the BRICS are a threat that people are underestimating right now, and what it would see. Everyone talked about the fact that they were too small of a group, even though they represented nearly half of the world population, 40, 50% of global GDP, three of the four largest nuclear arsenals, all the commodities, the manufacturing, the rare earths. Everyone said, well, that it's just they can't compete with the dollar in terms of settlement. But when you open up this new bridge network to all of the non-BRICS nations, including the Belt Road, the Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the BRICS, you're talking the majority of human population and all of the things that go along with it. So that is something that no one really thought of. And if that were to be, in fact, that is the stated goal of the meeting in Brazil, is to find alternative settlement and payment systems outside the dollar to reduce dependence on the dollar. Well, if you're opening it up to all non-BRICS nations and the alignment that they have with the Belt Road in particular, which is 75% of human population in and of itself, 50% of global GDP, add that to the BRICS, the Belt Road, and all of these countries are closely aligned with China. It doesn't mean they're in the BRICS, but they're aligned. You get countries like Vietnam who have officially applied. You get Indonesia who has officially been admitted. These are countries that are resource rich and are, I think, breaking away slowly. So the slowness of it represents that this is a very big deal, and President Trump is certainly showing you don't want to be on the wrong side of the U.S. agenda. And so I think these countries are trying the best they can to align themselves in a way that allows them to break free, but not until all the I's are dotted and T's are checked. So when that all at once moment is, Jared, I have no idea, brother, but I do think it's coming to a degree that I think it would be nearly impossible to expect the dollar to retain its level of prestige and its level of accumulation and or just its place in the natural order of things as the world reserve. It is if you hold all of your assets in dollars, you're destined to go broke, period. And I think that's really where we're at this stage of the cycle. So yes, it's coming. When? I don't know. And I think it's kind of silly to try and figure it out just to simply say, until it does, we still have time to protect ourselves, and don't look at whether it be Bitcoin or gold or silver or XRP or whatever asset you are accumulating. You're not doing it to become wealthy. You're doing it because these things represent wealth in a system that seems to be going by the wayside. It's kind of the way I look at it.
So I love what you just said there, Andy. I have a little bit well, I have some XRP. I have a little bit of Bitcoin. I have a pretty good amount of silver and gold. And I am not stacking those to get rich. I'm stacking those to basically keep my wealth and be able to
Right.
retain it should something crazy happen. I also have real estate and I also have cash that's around too. But to your point, if I go back about 5 years, I used to have a stronger belief of having 30% cash on the sidelines. That's not the
Right.
case anymore. I've started putting a lot of that cash to work, and I should even say maybe not exactly to work, but I've put it into safer assets. I've put it into more gold and silver. And I,
You know,
I
the
love
dollar's
what,
down 9% this year alone, so that's been a
yes,
smart move.
it has been a very smart move. And two things I want to point out. One, here in Hawaii, I can't find a burrito for under $18 at a food truck. Okay. So it's like one of those things where um, we just, inflation is hitting different sectors of the market at different times. Food inflation is definitely hitting. Even back home in California, we've seen all of the restaurants up everything by about $3 or $4. And so you continue to get that. So I love the statement that or at least the philosophy that your dad taught you and shared with you about buying every couple weeks and making sure that you're still buying something. And I've tried to follow that the best I can. And sometimes I'm helping someone local that needs to unload some silver or gold. Other times I'm calling up, to Miles Franklin and putting an order in, for a monster box or for a bunch of 10th ounce gold eagles. We've done that in the past. And so, I think the sound advice here, just to step back from what you were saying, is, you can't plan for an all the sudden moment. It's impossible to, unless you have a time machine, to know exactly when something happens. And even if you did and you went back and told yourself, you probably would screw up history, so it wouldn't happen the
Mhm.
same way anyway. The best thing to do is be preparing all the time. And, kind of that comment that people call out there is dollar cost averaging. So it's taking the amount of money that you want to buy, say this year in gold or silver, you split it out by 12 months, and then that's how much you start to accumulate every month. The other thing I
Yeah.
like to look at is with gold and silver prices coming down a little bit right now, this is a signal to me to pick up a little bit more and to, get more this month than I might in a future month where it could be higher. Um, but I guess, what are you guys seeing from Miles Franklin right now? Are you seeing more people buying? Are you seeing more people selling? Are they looking at gold, platinum, silver? What metals are people picking up today from you guys?
Well, I think right now the real value is found in silver and in platinum, and that's where there has been more demand recently than there has in gold, simply because gold has moved up so fast, and silver and platinum had lagged behind from a standpoint of historical standpoint. Both in relation to gold represent an unbelievable value. So we've seen a lot of purchases of platinum. We've seen a lot of purchases of silver. So yeah, I think that in general, the public, Jay, is out of really not really part of this rally. The rally has been by sophisticated investors, central
Yep.
banks, and commercial banks and sovereign wealth funds that have been pushing the price higher. And even in that environment where you're seeing it's interesting because you're seeing the institutional investors sell every single week since February equities and dumping at a level at the last 4 weeks have averaged 2 billion per week. The insiders selling equities at the same time. Mom and pop retail investors have a larger allocation to equities than ever before, even greater than the dot-com bubble at like 53%. So what could possibly go wrong there? And then at the same time, you have it inverted on commodities. You have the biggest
Yep.
money in the world, those that are the most sophisticated, standing for delivery to the point where we're seeing the largest delivery in the history of the COMEX market in both gold and silver on the May contract. And we'll see what those numbers look like here on Friday. But again, you got quarter end on Monday, you got options expiration, and you got these silver contracts going off the board. It's going to be an interesting few days. I would suspect there to be probably even a little bit more weakness heading into the end of the year. But the public is missing this, and that's been done maybe by design, certainly through volatility, through rhetoric, through lack of anything positive to be reported on gold and silver. So for those that have been buying, we've been recommending to them to buy silver and to buy platinum because you don't get values like that very often. They're generational values when you compare them on a historical precedent to their relationship with gold, to their relationship historically. So yeah, there's been some gold buying, but mostly it's been silver, and then second would be platinum. It's interesting because platinum had been forgotten for the last,
Yep.
I don't know how many years, for a long time. We didn't sell much at all. Now there's a huge demand for it. The U.S. Mint, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't made a platinum eagle in a couple of years. They make some proof coins, but nothing commercial strike. Don't believe they're
I think
doing
it
any
was
this year or next year.
2023.
Yeah, and they're not doing any this year, and to my
Yep.
knowledge, they haven't said they're going to do any in 26. So you have platinum eagles as rare as hen's teeth. You have, maples and Britannias and, the Krugerrands or Philharmonics. I mean, these are coins that you get up one shot at them, and that's it. They're gone. They're really hard to come by. There are bars that you can get. So just as platinum is representing such an amazing value, getting the product has become more challenging. But we do have some bars, and do have some coins available, but big premiums in relation, I think, to where they should be. Silver, on the other hand, across the board represents, in my opinion, value of a generation. When I think of silver, I think of the word asymmetrical, lowest downside, highest upside. But with all of this said, the only people that are taking advantage of that are the most sophisticated, well-informed traders in the world. And why I say sophisticated is because the amount of deliveries coming off of COMEX is record-breaking. It's groundbreaking. And it's not an easy thing to do. These are people that are very connected, they're very smart, and when they're pulling off as much metal off of the exchange as they've been doing, where are they moving it to? And who's taking possession of it? And these are things that I think, people need to think about. Who's got the ability to stand for delivery to that degree in gold and silver, silver in particular? The public, I think, Jared, is missing this largely, but those that have been buying have been focusing on silver or platinum.
I definitely agree. Platinum right now is up almost 2% today, while the rest of the metals are down. It's playing its own game right now. It's definitely in a breakout position. So you can grab that. I do have a little bit of platinum. I wish I had more. So that's definitely one I'm looking to pick up a little bit more on. But to your point, the premiums can be pretty high on that one. So
they are high, and they're not dealer imposed. They're they're market imposed. There's just not a lot of it, and people are finally starting to recognize it.
So you got platinum. There's some great things with platinum. I think if you don't have any platinum, now's a great time to pick some up. Now, platinum's one that is not a monetary metal, even though it is minted into coins. It hasn't really been used by any country, as far as I know of, in any mass circulation event. But it is a fun metal to have. Now, one thing I do recommend with platinum is making sure you put it in a different container and you label it. If something happens to me and I go to pass away and my wife sees it, she is not going to know the difference between platinum and silver. Okay. And that's important for a lot lot of you out there.
They
but
look
Andy,
very much alike, feel very
they do.
different in terms of density. In fact, I think it's even more dense than gold, heavier. But yeah, if you didn't know any better, it would be a very easy mistake. Yeah, it'd be a very easy mistake to make.
It can be. So
that's good advice.
Silver is one I'm definitely looking at more heavily now. Recently, Andy, just a couple of months ago, I picked up a monster box from you. Right now, I'm looking to pick up more silver. So, there's a couple things. I interviewed my daughters on the beach. That video will come out a little bit later this week. And I asked them if they have any silver and gold. And they both remember getting a 100-ounce silver bar for Christmas a couple years ago. And I've also given them some other silver and some gold. And they've kind of balked at that the last couple of years, but they're now in college. They're starting to see inflation. They're starting to understand it more. And I'm showing them how the price of silver has gone up from where it was just a couple of years ago. And to your point, it's suppression. If the bullion banks decide to stop shorting silver, they don't have to completely stop it. If they just pull back on how much they're doing, we could see that price start to run. And at some point, if they see the price run, they may just decide, hey, it's not worth shorting it right now. Let's just let it run for a bit. And I know that's happened in the past too. And so to your point, I am looking more at silver right now than gold. Now, Andy, what would happen if I wanted to trade some of my gold in for silver? Is that something you guys do? And how does that work? Do I end up losing a bunch of money on that trade? How do you guys, set that up for people?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, there's taxes involved unless it's in an IRA. If it's in an IRA, it's very easy to do and is merited. If you sell your gold, most of what you sell will not trigger dealer reporting. It's the honor system. You're supposed to report it yourself. And when you purchase, there is no reporting on the other side. Let's just pretend you do your reporting and you trade some gold. You report to the IRS, yeah, you sold your gold, and here is your gain, if any. Mm-hmm. The neat thing about it is that we then take the proceeds of that transaction and apply it to your silver purchase. Therefore, you never wrote a check out or sent a wire to purchase the silver. And in essence, no one asked you what you do with the proceeds of your sold gold. You sold it, period. You filed. when you take those proceeds and apply them to silver, now that silver is in essence paper trail free, because the loss in privacy, Jared, in and of itself is writing
Yep.
out a check, which you wouldn't have done, or sent a wire. So now you own that silver legally, paper trail free. You could show it if you had to, but otherwise it's a way to gather privacy through reporting of selling your gold, and and it's that simple. We will help you get it shipped back. We will provide a FedEx air bill with our insurance on it. In most cases, we pay for it, and then we turn around and ship you back your silver free of charge by FedEx insured, whatever you want. And it's a wise thing to do, arguably, at these rates. It would have been even smarter recently when the ratio was a little bit higher. But anytime you're north of roughly 80 to 1, you want to be in silver. Anytime you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 1 or lower, arguably you want to be in gold. So yeah, if you were to trade your gold right now at a ratio of, what do we got?
Yeah, I'm
Roughly.
showing 92, 60, 69 today.
Right. So at a ratio of 92, once it gets to 40, 45 to 1 or whatnot, you switch back. Well, 45 to 1 would represent roughly the 200-year average of the price, last 200 years. That's roughly the average of the price or the ratio between gold and silver. And then at the same time, it's still coming out of the ground 6 times lower than that. So when you talk about a generational value, it is. And has been for a while. That it exemplifies the statement that the markets can stay irrational longer than we can stay solvent. But yeah, it is the trade that I think people should think of, and it's very easy to do, and we can help people do it. We lock both sides of the order in. We send you the invoices. We send you FedEx air bills. You ship back your gold. We sell that gold to the marketplace, and we turn around and ship you your silver with the proceeds that you never wrote out a check for. It's that easy, and in some respects, I think it's a no-brainer, especially when you look at things like pre-65 constitutional silver, which we can do at prices that I've never seen on this stuff before. So there are really good values to be found in the silver market, even with silver eagles. But whatever you're buying, the premiums are as low as I've ever seen them. That the availability is quite good, and the reason to do it is very, very sound. I guess we just have to wonder how long before we see that ratio revert or correct. And I just think that there are very few opportunities that you will ever get like this in investing. I really do mean that. There are very few times where, if in order to double what you started with, you just need to reach the average of the past 200 years. So that's not a lot. And I think it's the way to look at it, really, instead of the silver to gold ratio, is look at it as the price of silver measured in gold. And
Okay.
they've mostly ranged between 1/50th and 1/80th of an ounce, but have averaged roughly 1/45th. But when you get anywhere near the extreme low of about a 1/100th of an ounce of gold, what that really means is that silver is one of the cheapest levels it's ever been in all of recorded human history. And it's a rare setup with unbelievably strong upside potential. Opportunities like this don't come around often, I guess is all I'm trying to say. And that's the truth. That's not salesmanship. That's just historical fact. And it's one that I would think is an opportunity that people should strongly consider, especially in an IRA, because then you have no tax implications. You don't have to mail anything back. It's just bing and boom, and then you can switch back to gold when the ratio corrects and double what you otherwise, double what you started with here today, which is something that I think you could very easily see.
And like you pointed out, that's a great time to swap back from silver into gold. And when you start to do that, you're essentially, if you play it right, you can basically double your amount of ounces in gold by doing that back and forth.
Totally.
So I think it's a great thing for people to consider and look at.
Look, the
So
thing to keep in mind more than anything right now is
okay,
that they're panicking they being the banks. They're trading over 350 million ounces of paper daily to suppress the price, Jared. And last I looked, somewhere around 960 million ounce short interest. You want to talk about the potential for a short squeeze? That's why you could have all but guaranteed the price was going to come down here leading into the end of the weekend because of the options expiration, the end of the quarter, where the LBMA and then the COMEX, these are important end of quarter numbers, and then of course the July contract rolls off the board on Monday, first day of delivery, and so all of these options, all of these derivatives, they're trying to keep the price down so that they finish out of the money, and then typically the way this works is that Monday afternoon, bang, it goes right back up.
Yeah.
This is just the same bullshit they've been doing for a long time. But one of these days they get caught with their pants down, the way that Bear Stearns did, which was largely why they went out of business, because they were on the wrong side of this. And so while we're really doing by playing this suppression game is playing right into the hands of the countries that are standing for delivery and the big players standing for delivery at subsidized prices. Eric Young, King Kong on Twitter says that the Chinese are part of this now too, because they know exactly what we've been doing, and they're like, fine, we'll beat you at your own game. We'll play the paper price, we'll suppress the price, and then we'll stand for delivery as well at stupid subsidized prices. So I truly believe we're coming to the end of this game, and the desperation that they had to use here at the second largest concentrate short position ever on COMEX in silver is evidence of that. So yeah, it's a good time to be switching to silver, because all of these shenanigans that we're seeing and the shortness of availability is on the COMEX and the LBMA, where it's 8-week delivery delay. On LBMA, it's supposed to be 1 day. At some point, that has to spill over into the retail market. It hasn't happened yet, but it can happen very quickly with one spark, one event, one anything. And I have often also told people that it's been my experience going all the way back to Desert Storm. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and anytime there is a conflict that has arisen where we would expect the price to shoot up and the price of stocks to crash, it does the opposite at first. It's crowd control. My friend Jim Sinclair, God rest his soul, used to call it MOPE, M-O-P-E, Management of Perception Economics, where it's all about managing perception. And it's easy to do with levered contracts. They don't want people thinking, oh shit, the sky's falling, sell dollars, sell equities, buy gold and silver. That's the last thing they want when they have these large short positions, which are being used to perpetuate the illusion of strength of currency, strength of bond market, et cetera. It's a game that we're losing at. It's a game that is for the very first time in all of these years, I believe, is coming to an end. Now, when and what does that look like, I don't know. But the level of effort that is being used to keep this game going is exceedingly interesting. And then you look at gold, and it just seems to me that gold has broken free from this and seems like it's being controlled more by the Chinese and other markets than it is by the COMEX. So only time will tell, but silver is still within the grips of the bankers, and although a very dangerous game, I would say, that they are playing, and the next couple of days, I think, is exactly why. If it got away from them, you're talking blowing up some of the biggest banks in the world. Now, I doubt it will get away from them here yet, but we're getting to that point where the deliveries are very easily overwhelming the availability of what is on the exchanges or what can quickly be delivered. Look at the LBMA. Sorry, guys, you're supposed to get your bars in 3 days. We're 8 weeks because we have a shortage of trucks and manpower. That's not true. It's that they've got caught and they're scrambling, trying to get those bars to be able to make those deliveries. It's as close to of a default as we've ever seen. And then you look at the announcements that come out of the European Central Bank, where they said this type of action, the demand for gold on the markets, is actually a threat to the entire system. They're acknowledging it. They acknowledge the fact that physical gold and silver demand is a threat to the system. Well, that's because for the first time ever, people are standing for delivery. This is coming right out of the European Central Bank. And so, yeah, I would say that we're getting closer to that moment than ever. And the value you find, the asymmetrical value, low downside, high upside, in silver rivals anything I've ever seen in finance in almost 4 decades.
I agree. So, Andy, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they reach out to you?
Well, the best way would be to send us an email at info@milesfranklin. Let us know that they heard of me or us on this show. We will send them our price list, which will be as good or better than anywhere in America. If they find a better price, let us know. Typically, we can match or beat it. Ask any questions that you have, from politics to geopolitics to economics, anything you've heard here, IRAs, whatever, and we will send that with no obligation. If you'd like to be contacted, let us know. Put your phone number down. Check your spam if you don't get it quickly. That can happen once in a blue moon. Info @milesfranklin.com is the best way to do it.
And I highly recommend it, guys. I've been a customer of Andy's for a while now, as well as some of my friends and my dad, and we've had great success in getting some great metals at really good prices. So, Andy, I want to thank you again for jumping on, and I'm looking forward to hearing your announcement in the next couple days.
Yeah, it should be tomorrow, I'm hoping. And when are you going to come down to Florida so we can do one of these live here in the studio?
I need to make a plan. I think in the fall we should do it.
Well, I would love that. I'd love that more than anything. And bring your golf clubs when you do. But I hope you and your
Definitely.
family enjoy the rest of your vacation. And thank your wife for letting me borrow you for a little bit. And hang on tight on that zip line. Be careful.